The village of Ravenshollow had always carried a strange quietness, a heaviness in the air that even the wind seemed afraid to touch. At sunrise, the fog rolled in thick waves, swallowing the crooked houses and forest edges in milky gray. People walked quickly there, rarely speaking, rarely looking up, as if the centuries-old fear still pressed on their shoulders. And in the center of that fear, whispered in trembling voices around fires and behind locked doors, lived one legend, one shadow, one name no one dared to speak aloud: Morgana, the witch of the Black Forest. For generations, she was the ghost story that kept children inside after sunset and adults awake at night. But for Amelia Hartwood, a restless young woman with a curious heart and a hunger for truths buried in places others feared to walk, Morgana was not just a legend. She was a question waiting to be answered, a mystery written in roots and shadows. Amelia had arrived in Ravenshollow only 2 weeks earlier, hoping to research local folklore for her upcoming book. She was a documentary writer, known for digging into old myths and finding surprising truths hidden beneath. Ravenshollow felt different though, like the town itself was holding its breath every time she asked a question. The villagers would divert their eyes, close their doors, or whisper a fragile warning. "Don't go near the forest, Miss Hartwood. Some shadows are alive." She ignored them at first, assuming it was only superstition, until the dreams began. Every night, Amelia found herself walking through a moonlit forest in her sleep, guided by a pale figure wearing a long, tattered gown, hair like tangled vines, eyes burning gold. The witch never spoke in those dreams. She only pointed toward something hidden deep inside the woods. And each time Amelia woke, she felt leaves on her clothes, dirt under her nails, and the faint scent of fire lingering in the air. One morning, determined to discover the truth behind her dreams, Amelia ventured into the Black Forest despite the villagers' warnings. The deeper she walked, the quieter the world became, as if the forest were listening to her footsteps. Birds fell silent, branches stood still, and even the fog seemed to retreat from her path. She eventually found an old ruin buried under thick ivy, stone walls, a broken iron gate, and the faint remains of what looked like ancient spell markings carved into the stones. The place felt alive, pulsing with some old, sleeping force. As Amelia brushed dust off one of the carvings, the air suddenly grew colder. A whisper, soft, distant, broken, echoed right beside her ear. "Help me," she stumbled back, heart pounding. But no one was there. Yet she could feel it, someone or something, watching her. Amelia continued exploring, until she found a hidden cellar beneath the ruins. Inside was an old journal covered in dark soot, clearly damaged in a fire long ago. She carried it home and spent hours deciphering the half-burned pages. The journal belonged to a woman named Seraphine, a healer once beloved in Ravenshollow, before she was accused of witchcraft. Seraphine wrote about a jealous nobleman who lusted for her and punished her rejection by spreading lies that she practiced dark magic. The villagers, blinded by fear, dragged her into the woods and burned her alive. Her last words, according to the journal, were a curse, one that promised she would return as a shadow until the truth was revealed. Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that Seraphine and Morgana were connected, perhaps even the same. But as she read deeper, she discovered something more chilling. Seraphine wrote that her spirit had been bound to the forest not by her own curse, but by an ancient ritual performed by the villagers to ensure she never found peace. That night, the witch appeared again in Amelia's dream, but this time closer, clearer. Her voice finally came through, ragged, aching, desperate. "Free me, they trapped me, find stone." Amelia woke with a jolt, drenched in sweat, her room cold as winter. She knew she couldn't ignore it anymore. The witch wasn't haunting the forest for vengeance. She was trapped, and she needed someone brave enough to help her. Armed with a lantern, rope, and the journal, Amelia returned to the forest under a moonless sky. Every step she took felt heavier, the darkness curling around her like a living thing. She soon found the altar described in Seraphine's journal, a large stone slab surrounded by strange symbols, stained by centuries of rain and forgotten rituals. Beneath the slab, according to the journal, lay the binding stone, an enchanted object imprisoning the witch's spirit. As Amelia pushed against the slab, the ground trembled. The forest groaned. And then from the shadows, a voice seeped through the trees. "Leave this place." It wasn't the witch. It was deeper, harsher, human, but filled with fury. An old man stepped into the clearing, carrying a rusted axe and a burning torch. Amelia recognized him from the village. Aldrich Thorne, the self-proclaimed guardian of tradition. She must not be freed, he hissed, eyes wild. Her curse will consume us all. She is evil. She always was. Amelia held her ground. She wasn't a witch, she argued. She was murdered, punished for something she didn't do. You all trapped her here because you were afraid. Aldrich's face twisted with rage. Fear keeps us alive, he spat. You don't know what she truly was. And then he lunged. Amelia dodged just in time, scrambling toward the altar. As Aldrich raised his axe again, a sudden gust of wind, cold and violent, swept through the clearing. The torch went out. The forest plunged into darkness. And then, emerging from the shadows, like smoke rising from ashes, came the witch. Her body shimmered between solid and spectral, her eyes glowing with a haunting sadness. She lifted her hand, and Aldrich froze mid-strike, trembling as if held by invisible chains. Enough, she whispered, her voice echoing with centuries of sorrow. I will not harm the innocent. Amelia stared in awe as the witch turned toward her. Free me, before he binds me again. With shaking hands, Amelia pried open the stone slab. Beneath it was a small black stone pulsing with faint light, the binding stone. She lifted it, feeling the air instantly crackle with energy. The witch closed her eyes, bracing herself. Amelia smashed the stone against the altar. The moment it shattered, the forest erupted with a piercing scream, not from the witch, but from Aldrich. His body collapsed to the ground, the invisible hold releasing him as he convulsed and gasped for breath. The witch's form grew brighter, clearer, her face softening as if shedding centuries of pain. Thank you, she murmured, hovering inches above the ground. You've broken the chain they forged in fear. The forest around them began to shift, trees straightening, fog thinning, air warming, as though the land itself were healing. But as Amelia watched, the witch's expression changed. A shadow passed through her eyes. However, freedom is not without cost. Before Amelia could react, the witch reached forward and pressed her hand over Amelia's heart. A surge of cold flooded Amelia's body. She gasped as her vision blurred, her surroundings melting into darkness. When she opened her eyes again, she was lying alone on the forest floor. The witch was gone. Aldrich's body had vanished, and the air felt wrong. Too heavy, too still. Amelia weakly stood, noticing something strange. Her reflection in a nearby pool of water flickered, shifting between her own face and the witch's. Her eyes glowed faintly gold. Her breath turned to white mist even though the night was warm. Realization sank into her bones like ice. The witch had not simply vanished. She had passed something on. A mark. A piece of her spirit. A responsibility. Amelia hurried back to the village, hoping someone could explain what was happening. But when the villagers saw her glowing eyes, they recoiled in terror. Doors slammed. Windows locked. The whispers began again, fearful, frantic. The witch has returned. Amelia tried to speak to them, tried to assure them she meant no harm, but the more she pleaded, the more they feared her. The forest curse had not ended. It had shifted, passed on, transformed. As days went by, Amelia felt the witch's memories seep into her mind, fragments of fire, betrayal, grief, and centuries of isolation. Some nights, she wandered the forest, without remembering why. Some mornings she woke with dirt on her feet and the feeling that she had been watched by hundreds of unseen eyes. The villagers began leaving offerings outside her door, flowers, herbs, carved symbols. Out of fear, not respect. Amelia slowly became what Seraphine had been, a misunderstood shadow, feared for something she could not control. One foggy night, as Amelia stood near the forest's edge, she sensed a presence behind her. She turned, and there stood the witch, now fully restored. Her form no longer spectral but human, her beauty haunting and serene. Do not fear, the witch whispered. You carry my mark, but you are still yourself. Amelia felt tears in her eyes. Why me? She asked. The witch looked toward the forest, her gaze heavy with knowledge. Because the curse was never mine, she said softly. It belonged to the fear of this land. And fear needs a vessel. I carried it for centuries. Now it seeks a new anchor. She reached out and touched Amelia's forehead, sending a warm pulse through her. But you are stronger than I ever was. You can end the curse, not by breaking it, but by changing what they fear. With that, the witch faded into the moonlight, leaving Amelia standing alone with the weight of an ancient legacy. Over time, she learned to control the powers she inherited, the ability to sense danger, influence nature, and even communicate with lost spirits. Slowly, she earned the trust of the villagers by healing their illnesses, protecting their fields, and saving them from forest accidents. The whisper of which eventually softened into guardian. Ravenshollow began to change, slowly but surely, shedding centuries of superstition and learning to trust again. But at night, when the moon was high and the forest shimmered with silver mist, Amelia sometimes felt a shadow watching her from between the trees, a familiar presence, neither threatening nor comforting. And in those moments, she realized the truth. The witch's story didn't end with freedom. It continued through her. A living reminder that fear can twist legends into monsters, and truth can be buried beneath ashes and shadows. Amelia had become the new protector of Ravenshollow, but also the new bearer of its oldest burden. And somewhere in the forest, the echoes of Morgana's voice still lingered, whispering through the leaves like a memory that refused to fade. The shadow of the witch lived on, not as a curse, but as a legacy,